I wrote this poem about 15 years ago about coming back to Waukegan, climbing up in that tree and finding a note I wrote to myself 40 years ago, in a little squirrel hole there. And when I open that note that I find 40 years later, the note that I've written to myself in the future says, I remember you. I remember you.
These are the times that I like being the mayor of Waukegan. Come to Waukegan to get a great experience, and let's get ready for this August 22nd huge birthday party for our own Ray Bradbury.
Welcome to Greentown.
1, 2, 3.
2020, Ray Bradbury's 100th birthday. This is Ray Bradbury's home, and it's his legacy. It's going to start here.
The entire Bradbury family had this long, illustrious history in Waukegan. His great-grandfather was the mayor of Waukegan, of course. Most of the Bradbury family is still buried at the various cemeteries.
We are the origin of Bradbury. Not only is this where he's born and where he grows up, but it's his childhood library that inspires him here in Waukegan. It's the movies, going to the academy, going to the Genesee with his aunt, that helps to inspire him to think in the world of fantasy. And then it's the fateful Labor Day weekend, 1932, when he meets Mr. Electrico down at the lakefront. And that's where Ray Bradbury learns to live forever and starts writing after that time.
Carnival came to town here when I was 12 years old. I went down to see it at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I got up with my brother and ran down Washington Street and down the hill. And here's this greatest circus in the history of the world. It had 50 elephants with it. It had 10 giraffes, 40 lions, 100 horses. Mr. Electrico, the magician, was there, and he carried an electric chair with him. And the electricity would jump into Mr. Electrico's body. His hair would stand up, flames would sizzle in his eyes and between his teeth, and he'd grab a sword and he'd hold it out, and the audience would tap the various children on the heads, and the electricity would come down the sword and make their hair stand up. And he came to me, and he pointed at me with the sword, and the electricity went into my body, and my hair stood up, and he said, "Live forever!" And I said, "My gosh, that's the greatest idea I ever heard." So it was Mr. Electrico who got me started writing.
We're trying to relive the book, Something Wicked This Way Comes. Basically, people are going around and little parts of the movie are being acted out at those different spots.
By the pricking of my thumbs, something wicked this way comes.
His childhood here was spent walking and on bike and in the ravine and in the library. So the whole town was his field of the imagination.
I think the main message is use people's imagination, have some fun downtown. I mean, it really is a great downtown.
Crazy about my baby, he's my road color.
When we decided on the name, we called Ray directly with him and his wife, and they're like, I'm cool with that. Just his wife said, "Do you make a good martini?" And Bob goes, "Oh yeah." Waukegan's a good place. There's a lot of wonderful people from this town.
Welcome. This is a Greentown Tavern, downtown Genesee, Waukegan. We're driving the Greentown bus. We go up and down and we try to steal people from other bars and bring them down here. It is our lifelong mission.
My initial idea for the mural was inspire kids. It tied in so perfectly to kind of the Ray Bradbury theme of like space and the future. I'm from Belize originally. I was born and raised there, moved to Waukegan when I was 12, and I've been here ever since. I didn't really get introduced to Ray Bradbury until a lot later, so it's just kind of knowledge about people that are from here, like Ray Bradbury. And she doesn't represent anybody specific, and he doesn't represent anybody specific. It's just to symbolize everybody in the community. That's kind of what's keeping me here. It's like I live here, and there's actually people trying to make it a better place.
We're now 3 stories underground Genesee Street. As Genesee Street passes over us via this bridge, a ravine area, the Waukegan River is right there. Ray Bradbury would have come to this area. He would have traipsed through the same culvert that's over to the west end of this ravine area. He would have used it to get all the way from his house on St. James and all the way down to the lakefront by just meandering through this pathway. If you have a point of reference, not only in your imagination, but also in the physical form, you get a better sense of the purpose and a better sense of what he's talking about. And I know what he's talking about in the physical form because I've seen it. And this is it right here.
Because he was so connected to his inner child, he reminds us all that just because we grow up doesn't mean we need to grow up. It's very important. And that's really what Greentown is all about. It's staying connected to family. It's staying connected to memory. It's being passionate.
The Bradbury family saw good times and they saw hard times the first 20 years of his life. He was born into a working class family. His father, Leo Bradbury, after he married Esther Moberg and the children came, he settled down there in Waukegan as a lineman for the power company. He was an outdoorsman. And Ray's older brother, Skip, was very outdoorsy as well, very much an athlete. When Ray was born, he was called Shorty because he was kind of short until really about the middle of high school when he finally grew to his height of 5'10". But Shorty was a little guy who was fascinated with books and illustrations, had to have glasses by the time he was 11. They loved him, but they never understood him because he was so bookish and so imaginative. But the Depression changed everything in 1929. Ray would have been 9 years old that August. Even at that time, 2 of the 4 children had already died. His brother Skip's twin, Sam, had died of influenza. And then after Ray was born, a little sister, Betty Jane, before she was 2, she had died of influenza as well.
It's hard for us to imagine today. Those are all the things that are influencing him. The happiness, the sorrow, they're all in those books. They're all kind of woven together. Each character has their own thing that they have to overcome usually.
He sat on the crux of growing up. He wanted to live forever. And so the moment of growing up and shedding your boyhood is a moment of glory, but also of mourning. It means that you're on the horizon.
A writer must periodically break out of his isolation and come into contact with people. At least twice a month, Bradbury lectures to clubs.
It's kind of fitting when we step out on our own lawn and look up at night and see Mars in the sky that, you know, in some ways, he's there.
Before he started thinking of it as Mars, he was already thinking this is another world. It's a world that I can explore.
He would go out on summer nights and lie down on the dew-covered lawn of his grandparents' home and look up at the stars like, you know, so many curious and imaginative kids do. And they stare up at the sky and wonder about the meaning of life.
Think about that. That was his treasure. He was a Depression-era person. He didn't have much, but in his mind, he kept all of his memories, and that was something that he could draw from like a bank account.
When he's going back in his mind and he's creating Greentown in those books, he can bring back his memories and then has his great imagination to go along with it.
Bradbury was right on the cusp of the space age. I think one of the foundations of all of the work of Bradbury is seeking immortality. Of course, his output and his books mean he lives forever. He left us in 2012, but here we are talking about him. He lives forever.
For blast off. X -5, -4, -3, -2, x -1.
Going to Greentown, I'll stay for a while. Run through the fields and read books by the fire. Somebody warned me about dreaming too loud, but nobody stops you from dreaming in Greentown. Tell a good story and turn the world around.
I don't exist without my books. I exist through them.
Things strike me like lightning. I get an idea and I write it in an hour.
I was 10, 11, 12. I began to dream of becoming a writer.
I just love that moment of waking up with an idea floating in my head.
These are the essence and the center and the soul of my life.
I feel privileged to be part of this greatest age in the history of the world.